It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood from coast to coast and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Today's guest, Mary DeMuth, survived an extremely traumatic childhood, one that left her despondent during her early teenage years, even contemplating suicide. However, by age 15, Mary understood that her life had a plan. Mary believes that we can rise above the emotional and spiritual wounds caused by others and experience joy, peace, and healing. She's here to share the story of her recovery from painful encounters that should have left her distant or bitter to those around her. Welcome, Mary. Thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mary, from the events in your childhood, you would have had every reason to be bitter or to let your struggles define the type of person you became. But instead, you chose to be strong, have faith, and use that strength to touch many lives with a positive message. And that's something that I believe many people need today. So let's go back to your childhood for a moment. When you were 5 years old, you were raped. Was that something that happened one time? Was it a one-time occurrence, or was that something that you endured on a regular basis?
That was a daily thing that I endured every single day after school. I would come home from kindergarten and go to a babysitter's house, and in the afternoon, the older kids would get off school, and these two older brothers would pick me up from the babysitter's house, and then that's what they would do for the afternoon when they got home. And it took me a really long time to be able to tell the babysitter because they threatened they would kill my parents if I told, and they also used a really bad word to describe what they were doing. And so it took me a long time to tell, but once I did tell, nothing happened. They continued to do what they did, and that's when I learned the art of sleeping. So if I slept, the babysitter wouldn't bother me. And so I learned to kind of save myself during the end of that ordeal.
Did you ever try telling your mother or another adult about what was happening?
Well, what had happened was I had told my babysitter, and she said, "I will tell your mom." And I believed her. And so when the boys came back the next day, I was really confused, and I believed that nobody on earth cared a lick about me, including my mom. Now, later, of course, I learned that she didn't tell my mom, but I was only 5 years old. I believed what she said.
When did you finally realize as an older person what had happened? I would assume that you buried this for some time.
I did. It went on during my kindergarten year, and then we moved away, so I was set free from those boys. So it happened over that kindergarten year. But I didn't tell a soul until I was 15, so I kept it quiet for a decade.
And so when you were 15, was that the time when you were despondent and were contemplating taking your own life?
It was right prior to that. My 7th and 8th grade year were just some of the worst years of my life. My mom was on a third marriage, and it was breaking up, and my biological father had died when I was 10, and so this third stepfather or second stepfather had become my father, and so for him to leave was devastating to me. And was seeing a counselor at my junior high, and he would let me get out of class at any moment because I kept bursting into tears. So it was during those years, and finally around 9th grade was when, at 14, I was starting to go to Young Life, where they were sharing the gospel, and that's when I started my journey toward Jesus.
So were you a particularly religious person before that?
Not at all. I didn't know anything about Jesus. I didn't understand. I didn't even know what Christmas and Easter was, if it had anything to do with him, and I only knew him as a swear word, so I didn't know anything about nothing.
So Mary, when you were 15 years old, you had the realization that your life had a plan and that you were of value. How did that come about, and was that your turning point?
It was my turning point. I was at a weekend camp where I heard all about Jesus, and I I was such a broken girl. And so my prayer to God wasn't necessarily, oh, I'm such a sinner, please help me. It was, will you please be the daddy that will never leave me? And God has been that for me ever since. And that was the moment that my life started the long journey of healing.
Have you, throughout this journey, been able to forgive those young boys that hurt you?
Yes, that was not an instant thing. It took years and several layers, but yes, I have forgiven them. I don't know who they are because I was so young, and I only have their last names, and I haven't chosen to investigate what they might be doing these days. Statute of limitations has run out, so there's really nothing that can be done. But I have chosen to forgive them, and I actually feel pity for them.
So, Mary, you believe that we're called to forgive unconditionally. What does that mean, to forgive someone unconditionally?
Well, there's nothing, I think we get confused about forgiveness. For our sake, we should forgive, and God asks us to forgive because he's forgiven us so much. So in that sense, of course, if I look at the mountain of sins between me and God, it's huge, it's giant. But any sort of mountain of sins between a person and me is really just a molehill. It cannot compare to the great mountain between God and I. And so if I truly feel forgiven, then I will forgive as well. But all that to say, it's not easy. It's not simple. It's not just, okay, I made a decision on this day to forgive, because sometimes memories will come back, or you'll have a reminder and you'll feel sad again or hurt again. And that's just another indication that there's one more layer to forgive.
So it's really the process of letting go of it, never forgetting, because we really can't forget something like that, but
No.
It's letting it go, being aware, having understanding, and not letting it really keep you in chains for the rest of your life.
Exactly. You come to a point in your life where you realize you don't want to be tied to that incident anymore. And the more bitter and angry and the more you mull it over in your head, the more tied you are to it. So forgiveness is like breaking that chain and saying, okay, I'm done being connected to this hurt. And there's something beautiful that happens when you let go of it, because then you're no longer controlled by it.
Mary, all of us have experienced pain of some type in our life, and the natural reaction is to not want to feel that pain again, and we tend to create these walls around our heart. And you just wrote a book, The Wall Around Your Heart, breaking down those walls. How do we go about doing that? I mean, it's self-preservation to not want to feel it, but how do we get rid of those walls so that we can experience the good times as well?
Exactly. Great point. A lot of us, and I'm included, which is why I wrote the book, but a lot of us feel like it's safer to live aloof from other people, or just not entrust our heart to anyone because we've been so hurt. The problem with doing that is that you also cut off joy. And I finally got to that place in my life where I thought, I don't really want to cut off joy. If I want joy, I'm going to have the risk of the pain of letting other people in. And so the book is basically just what you said. It's a journey in tearing down the walls around your heart so that you can live this open-hearted life.
In the book, you use the Lord's Prayer as a treasure map to overcome hurt and pain.
Yeah, that's kind of fun because it's a framework almost everybody knows, and we've prayed it at one time or another, but I really believe it's a relational prayer, and Jesus prayed it in relationship, and he said that we should pray it in community, because the first word is our, not my Father who's in heaven, where I'm praying that quietly in my own room. It's our. We're doing that in the context of relationships. And so the whole book is taking you phrase by phrase, chapter by chapter. Each chapter is a phrase of the Lord's Prayer, and how does that relate to heartache that we have, and how we can come through on the other side without the bitterness and without the anger.
You believe that we should live without the walls toward other people, and you call this open-hearted living. What are some ways for us to escape relationship traps?
Well, I think one metaphor that might be helpful is, I'm not advocating that we just tear down everything and we let perpetrators hurt us. There's a difference between a wall and a gate, and we have every right to have a white picket fence around our house, which is very inviting. It's not a wall, it's a picket fence, and there's a gate, and we get to choose, who comes in our gate and who doesn't come in our gate. And there are some relationships that are harmful that we need to let stay out there. That doesn't mean we have a walled-off heart. It means that we're being cautious about guarding our heart. That's one thing. But to build a 20-foot wall made out of brick is saying that nobody ever gets in. And so that's why it's important that we not build walls. It's okay to have a fence, but we don't build the wall.
Now, Mary, we've been talking about the victim, someone who's been hurt by another. But what about the person who has inflicted the pain on another? What advice would you offer that person on how to extend an apology?
That's a great question. The scripture says in Romans 12 that as far as it depends on you, live at peace with all men. And so that means that if we know we've wronged someone, then it is our prerogative to make that right. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the person you've hurt is going to want to have you back, but your job is simply to do as much as you can. And so, in terms of offering an apology, as humbly and as contritely as possible, as honestly, willing to admit that, you might have been wrong about a situation or you regret saying those words to that person. It takes guts. It's a huge risk, and you likely will be rejected.
Mary, when we're going through those dark times in life, sometimes we don't even feel like we can survive it, but you say that it is possible to actually thrive during those times. So what are some ways that we can endure and thrive during relational pain, and what are some of the temptations that we face when we're hurt?
I think the biggest temptation is to turn inward, to possibly become depressed, and to get bitter. In terms of enduring, I wish I could say that I'm 100% awesome at that. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I tend to pull in within myself, or I overanalyze a situation to death. I think one of the greatest things that we can do is to realize what we can control and what we cannot control. And I'm in the middle of a relational heartache right now with a close friend, and I'm learning to let go and just let it go into God's wonderful hands. And so there's times where there's really nothing you can do other than relinquish it to God and ask Him to do the miracle.
And anyone who's ever worked a 12-step recovery program would know that those are the first 3 steps, acknowledging that yes. You cannot change another person, yes. Accepting that there's a higher power, and be willing to turn it over. So I think that's wonderful advice. People think that it's only for alcoholics, but it's really for any relationship type of situation. It's great advice.
It's amazing to me how the 12-step program and the process is so very helpful to everyday life. I agree.
Now, Mary, just to go back for a moment, for someone who's enduring what you endured as a child, what would you tell that person to do?
Well, one of the things that I say in The Wall Around Your Heart is an untold story never heals. And we need to find safe people to tell our stories to. And the more we keep stuff in and the more we don't talk about it, the more it makes us crazy in our head, because we think about it and think about it and think about it and overanalyze it. And a lot of things can happen when we do that. So letting it out to somebody who's safe, I think that's probably the easiest and best advice. And it's not easy, but it's simple advice. It's hard to entrust our stories to someone else, but you will be surprised at how much freedom you'll find when you let it out.
The book is The Wall Around Your Heart by Mary DeMuth. If you'd like more information, you can visit her website, marydemuth.com, and that's DEMUTH.com. Mary, thank you so much for being here with us today. So many people are going through different type of traumatic experiences in their life. They're having the dark night of the soul, and I think that it's a wonderful reminder that you're providing that no matter how dark it may seem at any particular moment, that there's hope and that you can get through it, and with faith and strength and finding inspiration wherever you can heal and move forward with your life. So thank you so much for being here.
It's been my pleasure.
We'll be right back. It's time for this week's Medical Minutes. Joining me today is Mark Anthony, the founder of Primo Health Solutions. Mark is a certified metabolic typing advisor who helps people achieve optimum wellness. He's here to present a new way for you to think about your health. With a personalized approach to health and wellness that teaches you how to respect your unique body chemistry, Mark makes it possible to gain more energy and reduce stress so you look and feel amazing. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Joan. Thank you very much for having me on today.
Mark, many of us say or know people that say statements like, I wish I had more energy, I'm totally stressed out, I need to lose a few pounds. These are really common complaints, and your work using metabolic typing teaches us how to use our body chemistry to gain more energy and reduce stress so we can look and feel younger and better. So what exactly is metabolic typing?
Metabolic typing is a program that really helps take the guesswork out of what people need to do to eat and feel healthy. There's a lot of information out there on the web that makes it very difficult to choose what it is that people need to do to be their best. So when you understand what your metabolic type is, you can choose the foods and the programs that are best suited for you, because there's a lot of information out there and all of it is correct, but it's only correct if it matches your metabolic type.
So, Mark, how do we determine our type? Are there tests or is there some type of an analysis in order to determine what we should individually be doing?
Yes. The way that we determine one's metabolic type is through taking the online metabolic typing questionnaire that was created by Bill Wolcott of Help Excel. And it's 165 questions that is computer-based, and it's based on pattern recognition, and then ask questions that are based on one's psychology, physiology, personality traits, and dietary traits. And once we figure out what one's metabolic type is, we can then set the work in motion of putting somebody on the correct diet and doing what is necessary for the person to feel their best.
Is this why, Mark, one person can follow a diet and lose 20 pounds where someone else can do the exact same thing and maybe lose 5 pounds or not even have any results?
That is exactly correct. So, two people can do the very same program, and one will have great results and the other person will have, maybe no effect at all or even have worse results than their counterpart.
So in addition to diet and nutrition and an eating program, what else does metabolic typing influence in our life? Does it have an impact on the types of exercise we should be doing, sleep, anything like that?
Metabolic typing can cover a broad range of how it helps somebody benefit themselves in their lives. So exercise is something that can pertain to it. But the top things that we see come about in metabolic typing is that people have increased energy, and they also have an improved mood, which improves their outlook and attitude in life. And then it also helps in weight correction. Those are the three top things that we see that work best.
Does having this type of information give us a precursor for a possible disease? Does it shed light on potential risks that we may have?
It certainly does, because when you understand what's going on with your body chemistry and what's taking place, you can head off certain things. When your body is functioning the way that it should, then it can be prevention of all sorts of diseases, whether it be heart disease or cancer, and keeping the top diseases at bay. So it really helps out for sure in being able to help people choose wisely and help themselves function their best.
I would think any information that we can gain to help ward off potential disease would be beneficial, and this is just another tool.
Absolutely.
Now, Mark, for someone who's interested in metabolic typing, what is the first thing they need to do? What's the process?
The very first thing that somebody needs to do when doing the metabolic typing is to take the metabolic typing questionnaire. That is the gateway to the whole entire metabolic typing program. So you need to figure out what your metabolic type is before you can go out there and start a metabolic typing program.
Does that need to be done when working with an expert like you, or is that something that someone can do on his own?
It is best when it is guided by a professional of metabolic typing, because there are so many different ways that you can achieve health, And you need to have somebody that can guide you to choosing the best things in the best order to allow the body to function at its optimal health the fastest.
So, Mark, if someone wants more information, where can they go to learn more about you, and are there any other resources that you can recommend?
They can go to my website, which is primohealthsolutions.com, and there's a variety of other information out there, but the next best place for them to go, I believe, is a website called Metabolic Me, which is run by Brent Martin, and he is doing some fantastic work by producing videos for one's metabolic type, which I use in all of my programs with my metabolic typing clients. It helps provide a vast amount of information that people can have at their fingertips at any time.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us today and for talking about metabolic typing. It's something that I've always heard about, but I really didn't know a whole lot about it. So thank you for providing this information. And again, if you want more information about Mark, you can go to primohealthsolutions.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Joan.
We'll be right back.
How happy are you? Are you having problems with depression? It is a common problem. 1 in 10 adult Americans have a form of depression. I'm Dr. Lynn Corrigan, an anti-aging and regenerative medicine physician with the Active Center for Health and Wellness in Hackensack, New Jersey. Alternative therapies are frequently used for depression. This comes as no surprise because pharmaceutical antidepressant medications are not as effective as once believed for people with less severe forms of depression. So what else can you do? Exercise. Many studies have shown that exercise is as effective as psychotherapy or antidepressant medications. Nutrition is very important. Eliminate caffeine, simple sugars, and alcohol. Stay away from the Western-style diet, which is more processed and refined foods, and adopt a Mediterranean diet with a variety of vegetables. Several dietary supplements are helpful, such as the B vitamins, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin D. Vitamin D should be measured by a blood test. Consider estrogen replacement therapy. In some small studies, estrogen replacement reduced symptoms of depression in postmenopausal women, and stopping it was associated with the symptoms returning in women who had a history of depression. Finally, acupuncture has been used for centuries, and the World Health Organization acknowledges that acupuncture is effective for mild to moderate depression. For more information, call 201-487-4600 or visit us on the web at theactivecenter.com.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit cyacyl.com. While on the site, read our digital magazine, listen to past shows on demand, read my blog, take part in the book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.